Where'd this band come from?
We were the best kept secret in rock and roll.
And turned punk rock into a pop sensation.
Suddenly they were one of the biggest bands in all of rock music.
Welcome to paradise. Oh, you know, where the hell did this come from?
Green Day led the second coming of punk, with volatile melodies that appealed to seething masses of suburban youths.
Whoa, you know, these kids are showing up really early and rushing the guards just to see our band play.
We got on the stage and it was insane.
But sudden fame came with a severe backlash. Green Day was kicked out of the underground and labeled a sellout.
There's never been a punk band that sold 1 million records. Green Day is not a punk band.
One of the unfortunate byproducts of Green Day's success, of course, was that the average imbecile associated punk rock with Green Day.
But Green Day has never had much patience for their critics.
This is my life. This is my lifestyle. And you know what? You're not invited. There's the door. See you later.
Instead of cowering to their hardcore peers, they scored a monster hit with a ballad of stunning sweetness.
Another turning point, a fork stuck in the road.
Probably the most punk thing we could have done is put that on the record at that point.
I just knew that the reaction was going to be really bizarre, but huge.
It's something unpredictable, but in the end is right. I hope you had the time of your life.
Ultimately, the band discovered how to be punk on their own terms.
Just be honest with yourself.
Now, mayhem, mosh pits, and mudslinging.
I'll fight for my band. I don't give a
Green Day, the story behind the music.
Come on, buddy. Step on back.
Did you know that they can play over 2 instruments? Don't believe me? Watch this.
In 1994, Green Day exploded out of the punk underground, assaulting the masses with their infectious brand of alienation.
I've never seen a band work a crowd so well. I mean, they are their fans. They know what a fan wants. They play the crowd. Seeing Billy Joe just engage one-on-one with the front row, I mean, it's a beautiful thing.
I am one of those melodramatic fools.
It's kind of scary, like, when you hear the music, because then it, like, sticks in your head, you know? You kind of have to go to a class to get the thing out of your head.
Much to their own surprise, Green Day became a pop phenomenon, the poster boys of punk's new wave.
So I better hold on.
But their hardcore peers did not take kindly to their success.
They used the punk scene as a stepping stone to become rock stars. That was kind of the feeling.
What they represent is not the essence of punk rock. They represent the kind of smiley face, la-la-la, happy type pop face of punk. I mean, real punk rock is just not commercially accessible.
I heard it all before.
The moment Green Day signed to a major label, they signed away their punk credentials and were accused of selling out, betraying the movement that created them.
It's a pretty touchy subject with me, because sometimes I still don't know if it was the right thing to do.
In signing that contract, if I had it to do over again, I don't know what the hell I'd do.
There is the side of me that sometimes wishes that I never did sign to a major label.
Watching the cars go rolling by.
Billy Joe Armstrong considered himself an outcast from birth. He grew up middle class in Rodeo, California, a gritty San Francisco suburb dominated by a vast oil refinery.
Well, Rodeo just sucked, you know. I mean, it was terrible. It was a terrible town.
There's nothing there. There's no movie theaters. There's nothing for kids to do.
I remember seeing it spray painted somewhere on the side of this wall, or it said Bordeo, because I mean, there was nothing to do in that town.
Billy Joe's family was strictly blue collar. His mom was a waitress. His dad drove a truck.
There was some struggling here and there, but one thing that I learned as a kid. Just be thankful for the things that you do have, because there's always someone that's got worse than you. Don't worry about who's got more.
There was always music in the Armstrong house. His dad was a jazz drummer, and by the age of 8, Billy Joe was playing guitar. Trying to mimic the pounding chords of heavy metal he heard on the radio.
I really started getting into music at a pretty young age, the early Van Halen days, or AC/DC. I loved bands that had character and were a solid unit.
But when Billy Joe was just 10, the solid unit of his family was unexpectedly torn apart.
My dad got cancer of the esophagus, and it ended up spreading to the rest of his body. And by the time the doctor said that he got it, 3 months later, he was dead.
The sad part was his dad worked a lot, so he didn't spend a lot of quality time with him. You know, as he hit his teen years, it really started hitting him that I don't have my dad.
His mom had to wait tables at night to support the family, so the kids were left to their own devices.
I was always climbing through the back window to get into the house every day after school. It's like TV dinners, and there was nothing that was really keeping us as like a family unit anymore. I mean, it was we put the funk back in dysfunctional. Let's put it that way, you know.
In 5th grade, Billy Joe became best friends with another latchkey kid flirting with delinquency.
I had like 75 detentions, and the principal calls me in and he's laughing, going, Mike, nobody in the school has more detentions than you.
He was so obnoxious, and people would get irritated with him. But I always thought it was funny, and I think a lot of it had to do with trying to get a laugh out of me all the time.
The new friends had a common love for all things antisocial, especially the furious sound of hardcore punk.
But you hear that stuff, you're like, oh, wow, that's cool. It's got total energy, and it sounds like it's coming from people that are playing at the same kind of amps that I have. You know? Crap.
As they entered their teens, Billy Joe and Mike started venting their adolescent angst through songs.
Sweet children, sweet children.
They formed a band called Sweet Children, and friends plugged them into an alternative music scene just 15 miles down the freeway.
They kept talking to me about this place called Gilman Street in Berkeley.
924 Gilman Street was a mecca for punk rockers from the Bay Area, an old warehouse that had been converted into a club.
We'd see like punks that were sitting on the steps and, you know, looking very mean.
Inside Gilman's concrete walls, punk carried an almost sacred code of ethics.
No alcohol, no drugs, no sexism, no racism, no violence.
And most importantly, no corporations. Any musician that had signed to a major music label was considered a sellout and the enemy.
It was militant. The minute you make your living from music, it becomes corrupt, and it ruins everything.
The last thing you want to do is be a part of the masses, part of the sheep-like herd. Hell no, absolutely not.
Gilman was where social outcasts came to find a sense of community, and Billy Joe and Mike dove right in, christening themselves in the mosh pit.
Welcome to paradise.
There's a circle pit. I run in. We're running around in circles and having a blast. I remember this one punk guy jumps over and his Doc Martin caught me right in the forehead.
He got buckled, you know. It was harsh.
It knocked me flat out.
But for the first time in their lives, the 15-year-olds felt like they belonged somewhere.
At school, I felt sort of like invisible and I didn't exist, where there, I felt invisible, then I didn't exist, but I did it with a bunch of other people that felt the same way.
And I'm never gonna go.
Billy Joe and Mike's sole ambition was to play a gig at Gilman, and anything that got in the way would be sacrificed.
School for me was holding me back from what I really wanted to do. I wanted to be in a band, and I wanted to be a punk.
Welcome to paradise. Hey there, looking at me. So tell me, what do you see?
In 1987, 15-year-olds Billy Joe Armstrong and Mike Dirnt had formed a band called Sweet Children, pumping out their own brand of blue-collar punk. It was their dream to play Berkeley, California's punk mecca, Gilman Street. But at first, their sound was considered too melodic for the club's hardcore counterculture ethics.
We've never been entirely embraced by the punk rock community because we do sing love songs.
There was a lot of the punker than thou kids who never liked them, who would make fun of them for being too sweet and too innocent and too pop.
But in 1988, they finally convinced the managers of the club to give them a shot. And they cranked.
First time I ever got on a stage, I just felt like, wow, you know, this is where I've always wanted to be. It's like, I'm not the guy that's like watching anymore, I'm the guy that's playing.
Sweet Children came on and played like they were the Beatles at Shea Stadium. It was just incredible. Billy especially just sang his heart out. They just sang like they were already on top of the world, and they were.
When they turned 17, they decided they'd outgrown the name Sweet Children.
After a while, it just sort of sucked. It was terrible. And then I wrote a song. I got high one time, and I kind of wrote about the way I felt and feeling high. I called the song Green Day.
It looks like I found something new.
Their drummer wrote Green Day on his jacket, and their friends liked it, so it stuck.
So we went from one bad name to another bad name. I think we have the worst name in rock. I really do. I think it's the worst name in the world.
Here we go again. Infatuation touches me just when I thought that it would end.
In 1989, Green Day made their first album for Lookout Records, an independent label run by Gilman Street co-founder Lawrence Livermore. Produced for under $700, 39 Smooth was just something they could sell to their friends.
There was no way that we could become famous off of doing it or become rich or anything like that.
Corporate America wasn't concerned about us, and we weren't concerned about them, and there was never the idea that they would be interested.
It was about community and just the whole spirit of it. We would play, and our friends would be watching us play. Anything other than that is an outsider, and it's sort of the enemy.
In 1990, their drummer left Green Day for college. So Billy Joe and Mike looked no further than Gilman Street to recruit a replacement. 5-year veteran of the scene, Tré Cool.
He was loud, he was obnoxious, he was crude, he was insulting, he insulted women, he insulted men, he insulted animals, he insulted everybody, including me. Satan! He did drugs, he was into smoking dope, and he was into doing acid. We became friends really fast, I'll just say that.
With Tré behind the drums, Green Day set out to put themselves on the map. In May of '91, they headed out in a beat-up van on a fly-by-night tour of the U.S.
When you dress like this and you walk into a bathroom at a pit stop in the Midwest, you just assume you can kick some ass.
We headed out on tour, you know, just tried to leave our footprint in every state we could get our hands on.
We would play anywhere and everywhere, skateboard parks and vets halls and basement parties. It was about getting the show to begin with. That was the success.
To this day, I'm asking why I still think about you.
Selling their records and homemade T-shirts for gas money, Green Day made their own way across the country.
Just because there's no promoter, just because there's no agent or a manager or a huge record contract or a tour bus or even a place to sleep for the night does not mean that you can't be doing this on your own.
And expect the van to break down, you know, and expect to run out of money, but expect to have a good time.
You guys got a place to stay?
Yeah. Your mom's house.
They crashed wherever they could, making themselves at home in fans' houses. Sometimes a little too much at home.
You can spank me when I do not behave. One time we were down in L.A. playing, and we were staying at this house. It was completely full. There's not even a piece of carpet left. And they had a dog, a mom dog with her puppy. So I crawled in there with the puppies and the mom and slept in there all night. We got to know each other pretty well that night. In the morning, there's this thickest coffee, thickest, right? It was looking good. There's no milk or anything, and I like a little milk in my coffee. So I started looking at that dog, the mom dog, with the big old engorged breasts that she had, and then I milked the dog into the coffee. And got a nice creamy delight, thick East Bay coffee with dog milk.
Trey wasn't the only one making friends on the road. During a show in Minnesota, Billy Joe laid his eyes on a dark-haired beauty in the crowd.
We're playing in someone's basement in Dinkytown in Minneapolis. I saw this woman that had long black dreadlocks, and she was just beautiful.
There was definitely an attraction from the beginning.
Her name was Adrian, and after the show, she approached Billy Joe and asked him where she could buy the band's record.
I think I gave him my phone number and told him to call me and tell me how I can get a 7-inch.
I started calling her and started talking to her on the phone.
And our conversations just got longer and longer and more frequent.
She was taking a human sexuality class, and she started talking to me about this class.
He would always ask me about my class, and it was sort of a lead-in to talking about sex, you know?
And for a kid that's 18, some woman that's about 20, 21 years old talking to you about her human sexuality class, well, our conversations got pretty long.
After a few months of hefty long-distance bills, Billy Joe organized another tour of the Midwest just to see Adrian.
Billy's like, hey, let's go to play a gig in Minnesota. Adrian's from Minnesota.
I ended up kissing her. And then I went home and I wrote 2,000 Light Years Away.
It was a very sweet song, and, you know, him writing a song for me was very romantic and exciting.
In 1992, Green Day pounded out their second album, Kerplunk. They ended up selling 70,000 copies, an astonishing amount for a band on a tiny independent label with no distribution system.
Kerplunk came out, we ended up doing a tour, and something happened.
Our shows were getting pretty big.
People were singing along to our songs, and we were like, whoa, you know, where the hell did this come from?
So many people would come up to us afterwards going, man, where can I get your record? You know, it was just becoming more and more apparent that we were playing to more people than our records were getting to.
Green Day was outgrowing the punk community that had nurtured them, and they were about to face a critical decision. Stay small or merge into the mainstream and betray everything punks believed in. By 1992, Green Day had established a huge following in the punk underground. They had sold 70,000 copies of their second album, Kerplunk, on word of mouth alone.
It had nothing to do with a major record company. It was our thing, and we did it off being self-sufficient, for God's sake. We did it on our own philosophies, you know, and we stuck to them. Something started happening that we didn't really expect at all.
What happened was Nirvana. In 1992, the Seattle band ignited a grunge explosion, thrusting punk rock onto the agenda of every major record label.
Nirvana was really aggressive, abrasive music, and the fact that that became commercially viable for a time, that really opened the doors to the possibility that punk bands could actually be signed and be commercially popular.
Suddenly, Green Day's unique blend of punk attitude and pop melody became a coveted commodity.
These A&R guys started coming around and, you know, here's my card. Ha, ha, ha. It was absurd, the whole thought of it. We just, this can't happen. There's no way.
Nothing's gonna change my mind, I won't
Signing with a major label went against everything Green Day and their punk fans believed in.
Not only were we on an independent label, but we were adamantly against major labels at the time. It was all just watered down pop crap. I mean, I never watched MTV. I never listened to the radio.
Nonetheless, one record company after another courted the band and flew them down to LA for meetings. But the band just treated it like a big joke.
At least we're getting a free meal out of it, you know? And one guy even took us to Disneyland, you know? Poor bastard.
One guy, I forget his name, but he ended up drawing our Kerplunk logo on his ass, saying that he would do anything for us and tattooing on his ass.
And I stepped in line to walk amongst the dead.
But there was one record label rep the band could at least tolerate.
Well, the music was very fresh. It was fun, and it was fast, and it had punk music, punk rock music influence, which was something that I grew up on and loved.
Rob was like the only person that we met that had anything to do with music.
Rob to us seemed like the person that was sort of least full of
Rob Cavallo of Reprise Records was a former musician with a genuine love of punk music.
All our reference points were the same. You know, all the things we cared about in guitar sounds and drum sounds. Like, it was like we were speaking the same language from day one.
So in February of 1993, when Cavallo and Reprise offered Green Day a record deal, the band was at least willing to listen.
One thing I was just sort of thinking about the whole time was like, what if? I don't ever want to say that. I was too curious, you know? I felt like we had potential. I don't know if it was potential for failure or potential to being the biggest band in the world. All I know is we had potential, and I started thinking about that.
They said, you know what, our music deserves to be heard by a broader audience. We think that we've taken it as far as we can.
For me, it was never about money. It was about, you know, let's see how far we could take this.
Green Day found themselves at a dangerous crossroads. They knew if they signed to a major label, they would be violating a basic tenet of the punk code they had grown up embracing. They would be rejected by their hardcore peers as sellouts.
We knew that it was going to get a lot of if it went down.
It was scary. We didn't know what would happen. We didn't know what the backlash would be, which was probably one of the reasons why we decided to do it, because we were like, it.
It was kind of like, you know what, if we're going to do this, you either do it all the way or don't do it at all. And so we did. We removed ourselves from the punk community at that point.
After 2 months of debate, Green Day finally signed to Warner Reprise Records in April of '93. Word quickly spread back to their old stomping grounds in Berkeley.
I was quite perturbed, kind of, you know, demanded to talk to everybody in the band and like, how could you want to do this?
There was not really much going back to Gilman. You know, it was, they'd already crossed the line, so to speak, you know, they'd walked away from home.
Despite the rumblings of discontent, Green Day headed into the studio with something they never had before: major label money.
Then it was a whole nother experience because, you know, we'd been recording on a shoestring budget before. And at this point, we're recording for like a couple $100,000. I mean, that's just an extreme amount of money.
They started laying down tracks for their third album, Dookie. They shot their first music video in their basement with punk aesthetics in mind.
We wanted to show it all: zits, acne, you know, blemishes.
We cultivated quite a few zits at that point, which is kind of cool.
We had a friend of ours that said, oh, a friend of mine saw your video and she said that you guys were really ugly. There's that band that's really ugly. And it's like, that's kind of cool.
Ugly or not, when Dookie hit the stores in February of '94, MTV and mainstream radio jumped right on it.
Hey, we're Green Day.
You're watching MTV.
And this is a promo.
As Green Day exploded into the mainstream, 21-year-old Billy Joe decided he wanted to solidify his long-distance relationship with his girlfriend, Adrienne.
Adrienne was something that had nothing to do with my band, and I was totally in love with her, and I wanted to spend the rest of my life with her.
He called me and said, I really want you to move out to California. Come out there. I want to get married.
We got married a month later.
We didn't think about it. We just did it.
She got a ratty little dress, and we got married in my backyard. And then the next day after the wedding, she was like, I'm late. And I go, oh, really? And she's like, yeah.
We went down to Safeway and got a pregnancy test.
She ended up being pregnant.
We were really excited. Totally terrified, but very excited.
Do you have the time to listen to me whine about nothing and everything all at once?
With a baby on the way, Billy Joe set out on Green Day's biggest tour ever, crisscrossing the country in a funky old bookmobile.
Lollapalooza, alternative rock.
Green Day opened Lollapalooza in the summer of '94.
I think I'm cracking up. Am I just paranoid? Am I just up?
Then they sparked a filthy riot at a rain-soaked Woodstock.
We got on the f***ing stage, and it was insane.
Green Day's set turned into an emotional release for thousands of fans who spent the weekend stuck in the mud.
What the hell is going on? All this mud's flying.
They started throwing it. It's like, this, we're gonna throw it back.
And then it was on, you know?
This isn't love and peace, it's f***ing anarchy.
It ended up turning into this really cool thing. We were throwing it back, we were eating it, we were diving in it. All these people start jumping on stage. It was crazy.
In the midst of the mud fight, a security guard mistook bassist Mike Dirnt for a fan and attacked him.
He tackled me and I landed on a monitor behind my head and my back, and I went like that and I hit his shoulder with my jaw.
His teeth went flying out and never to be found.
And I looked at him and my teeth feel like sand in my mouth. I look out, I go, dude, I'm in the band.
It's like, yeah, woo, rock and roll. That was so awesome. And Mike's just like, I'm living.
With 300,000 fans and a national pay-per-view audience watching the mud-soaked set, Green Day became the band of the moment.
This was them caught in the act of being themselves. I think that is the thing that burst it wide open.
When they left that stage, there wasn't anybody that wasn't going to buy that record.
These lads rocked their way into the spotlight and our hearts, as well as the spotlight.
Dookie soared to #2 on the Billboard charts. And Green Day became the poster boys of a mainstream punk movement.
Billy Joe is so hot! I heard it all before.
Just their songs have like a certain meaning that just like teens seem to flock to.
The truth is that nobody said the word punk until after Green Day broke. Musically and culturally, it spawned, and it became really huge.
Women were dyeing their hair pink. Guys had blue hair. I mean, I think it was kind of pathetic, to tell you the truth.
One of the unfortunate byproducts of Green Day's success, of course, was that the average imbecile associated punk rock with Green Day. That became the image of what punk rock represented to the vast majority of people who had never bought a punk rock record before, but bought a Green Day record.
Green Day! Green Day!
The kids that were coming to the show were getting younger and younger, and punk was in every shopping mall that there was, and I don't know, and I felt like, wait a minute.
The B-side to Green Day's fame was an ugly backlash. Purists began to assail the band, writing them off as turncoats and watered-down punk imposters.
Even sort of these mainstream journalists were calling us a bunch of sellouts or whatever, and I was just like, look who the is talking.
Real punk rock is all about breaking cultural and social taboos. It's about offending people. It's about making them uncomfortable. It's about shocking the sensibilities of squares. It's about being abrasive, obnoxious, aggressive, and primitive. That's what it's about. And therefore, by those criteria, I mean, Green Day can hardly be said to be a punk band.
I think Green Day is aiding in the sellout of punk.
There's never been a punk band that sold platinum records. You know, like Green Day is not a punk band.
I've had this burning in my guts now for so long.
It did piss me off quite a bit because, you know, I was just being myself. This is my life. This is my lifestyle. And you know what? You're not invited. I'll fight for my band. I don't give a that. If you say something to my face, you might be picking yourself up off the ground after.
In 1995, punk rock had become America's new pop, and Green Day's major label debut, Dookie, was on its way to selling 10 million copies. But when Green Day returned to their punk community in Berkeley, California, the band was condemned as a sellout and viewed as the vanguard of a hostile corporate invasion.
There's your past that you have to face at some point.
Gilman Street, you know, suddenly had reporters coming, wanting to know what it was like to drink a 40-ouncer outside of Gilman Street. And Green Day brought it on them, you know, and so they're mad about it.
In the eyes of Gilman Street regulars, Green Day had betrayed the punk code, and they were vilified for it.
They were doing something which was considered treasonous, and therefore they were treated with tremendous abuse.
They'd walk down Telegraph Avenue, and the gutter punks, the kids who sit along the side of the street, would hiss, "Hey, rock star."
What brings you around? Did you lose something the last time you were here?
People were like frothing at the mouth. They would go play in local places, and people would be harassing them and abusing them and screaming at them and throwing stuff at them and just treating them like dirt.
There were so many nights where, like, we'd almost get into fights with kids being like, you know, trying to spit on the band, "Oh, you're sellouts."
It's like all your old friends that you used to hang out with, or all this kind of community, suddenly sort of rejects you.
A fair number of people at Gilman did feel betrayed, started saying terrible things about them. If I see Billy Joe ever, I'm going to kick his ass because he ruined the punk scene. It was just ugly and stupid.
The band was no longer welcome at Gilman, and the sense of betrayal became brutally evident one night when Billy Joe snuck into the club after hours with a friend.
There was nobody in there, and he had a key, and we were sitting and drinking, and I went into the girls' bathroom, and it said, "Billy Joe must die." That kind of sucks. I can't go to the place where I used to hang out all the time. That time period will always be a moment of confusion for me.
In 1996, wounded by the rejection of their punk peers, Green Day entered the studio to record their fourth album, Insomniac. They answered their critics by composing the hardest, angriest songs of their career.
They were like, all of this pop stuff, we want to show people that we're a punk band and we want to rock.
That record held a lot of pent-up aggression, you know, and frustration and discontent.
We were always like just trying to get tough, as hard as we could play.
It just sort of came out bleak sounding.
Mind is set on overdrive.
It felt a lot like Green Day was trying to say, hey, you know, we're not like sellouts, we're still just as edgy as ever. The ironic thing was that they were never that edgy and dark and harsh before.
That's the point of delirium. On my own, here we go.
When Green Day set out on a tour in support of Insomniac in late 1996, they felt like they were losing their focus.
I think that we were going pretty mental at the time. We started just kind of losing the desire to want to play, and we didn't know what it was for anymore.
After 7 months on the road, Green Day decided to cut their tour short.
I didn't want to feel like I was selling a product. I didn't want to feel like I was up there faking it.
The band had spent years wrestling with what it meant to be punk, and they were tired of trying to prove themselves. With their fifth album, Nimrod, they would transcend all the trappings of traditional punk rock.
Another turning point, a fork stuck in the road. Time grabs you by the wrist, directs you where to go.
When they released the acoustic ballad Good Riddance in October of '97, it was clear Green Day was letting go and moving on.
I think it was great, man. I was so excited about that song.
Probably the most punk thing we could have done is put that on the record at that point.
I couldn't wait for that song to come out as a single. I just knew that the reaction was going to be really bizarre, but huge.
It's something unpredictable, but in the end is right. I hope you had the time of your life.
The song hit big, featured on major television events like the final episode of Seinfeld and the World Series. Good Riddance became a cultural benchmark.
It was like everybody's prom song. It was everybody's graduation song. And that's like, you never expect to write somebody's prom song, you know? You never got invited to your prom.
For what it's worth, it was worth all the while.
The song launched Nimrod into multi-platinum status. But then, at the height of success, Green Day would simply disappear. In September of '98, Billy Joe became a father for the second time, and he was frustrated by the long periods he spent away from his family.
I was on tour the entire time she was pregnant with Joey. I was on tour the entire time she was pregnant with Jacob. You start to just feel like, God, I'm completely useless when it comes to being at home.
I think it was really hard for him to be on tour and to be a dad and try to be a husband. At that point, we were strained, very strained.
Billy Joe had lost his father as a kid, and he decided he wasn't going to let his children grow up without one.
Billy at that time had said, I wake up every morning and think about quitting.
I've been in a band for 10 years, and I was like, okay, and it had been constantly going. I just wanted to stop. Let's just stop.
So in November of '98, the members of Green Day decided to split up, taking a break from each other and the music business.
I think a lot of people thought that it was the end of us.
In November of 1998, Green Day had checked out of the music business. After a decade on the road, they decided to take a break and get back to their families.
They wanted to live normal lives and, you know, marry their girlfriends and have their kids and buy the houses in the suburbs, and I just did that.
Right before I was here, I was, you know, changing poop diapers. He in my hand, filled my whole hand with liquid baby.
Is that punk rock? I guess that's very punk rock.
We'd all gotten a chance to stop and take a look at how things are going on around us. I think Billy got a really good perspective on, you know, looking at the world around him.
He was able to have time to just really be reflective and think about who the hell am I right now.
Verses are you know, the scats. Choruses are the pads. Okay. Which is basically the same notes that you guys are playing, but just holding it and like doing swells instead of scats. Okay.
Over the course of a couple of years, the band gradually started playing again, writing new songs one day a week in Billy Joe's house.
Let's live life. Don't push it. Wait to be inspired. Just have 12 inspired moments and put them on a CD.
After all these years, is it still possible for Green Day to make a great record? Of course it is. Don't be an
I've been waiting a long time for this moment to come. I'm destined for anything at all. Downtown, lights will be shining on me like a new diamond ring out.
In October of 2000, Green Day re-entered the fray, releasing their 6th album, Warning. No longer brat-faced punks, they are now husbands and fathers, and their music reflects their growth as men.
He wrote some of those songs on Dookie when he was 18 years old. He's 29 now, and he's writing songs that reflect where he's at and his place in life.
Dawning of a new era calling. Don't let it catch you falling.
I want to get older. I want to improve with age. I want to be a man. I want to be an adult. I don't want to be some 40-year-old child. I don't think my wife wants a child either, you know? And my kids don't want a child. They want a father. And that's what I'm going to try to be.
Wake up.
But for Green Day, growing up does not mean slowing down.
I describe it as like being one of those little Evel Knievel dolls that you wind up and wind up and wind up, and then we're ready to go out the gate.
We were eager. We were like, come on, man, let's play. Let's go.
Except now when they hit the road, the wives and kids will be on the tour bus with them.
We're going to load up the tour bus with a bunch of toys and bicycles, and
we're going to bring the kids and make it the summer camp on wheels.
I wanna be the minority. I don't need your authority.
And when it comes to what their critics think, Green Day couldn't care less.
Eventually you come to realize that, they don't know and their opinion is ridiculous anyway, so, I mean, them.
Marching out of time to my open now. The only way I know.
End result is the most important thing, is that we have these songs. We have these records that we wrote, that we recorded, and they kick ass.
Well, I won't let anybody else's opinion of me or my band change what I think of who and what we are, because I think we've stuck to our ethics pretty well, and we make damn fine music.
If they've been cast out of the movement that created them, so be it, because Green Day is going to be punk on their own terms.
There are some of these bands that nowadays are saying, why did you want to be a rock star? Was it the money and the girls? Blah, blah, blah. It's like, you. It's not about that for me. It was about the music and about your philosophy and your politics, Just be honest with yourself.